Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome on behalf of ETOA to this webinar based on Italy and this post-crisis time that is going to be challenging, already is challenging. We at ETOA try to be listening to all stakeholders from various regions of Europe. As you probably know, we have presence in the UK in our London office. We also have presence in continental Europe through our Brussels office, and therefore are connected or try to be connected to what's happening both from a commercial or operational perspective and also from a policy perspective, which is in these days especially helpful. Therefore, we thought it was a good idea to bring all of you friends from the Italian bit of the industry, which is huge in Europe, and obviously Italy is one of the main destinations within it, and share ideas, thoughts, and reflections on how it has been during the crisis, and especially looking to the future. What are we going to do? How are we going to be able to manage the new challenges, product diversification, sustainability, pivot to domestic tourism, which is already happening in other countries as well, like Spain, Portugal, and France. For all of these reasons, we wanted to bring you a very special panel composed of people that are on the road, as I like to say, and can bring us real experience. Once we listen to them, I think it would be good to get all the questions that you may have. And during the length of this webinar, which will not be longer than 60 minutes, 1 hour, I will be throwing 3 questions. We have a poll, and it would be fantastic if you could participate and give us your opinion about the 3 questions that we're going to ask. That'll be later in about 40 minutes. Let me introduce you to Anja Keune. I think you, apologies for my pronunciation, Anja, because my German is non-existent. But she represents Saistours, which is a full DMC based in Italy, a company founded in Sicily, but that has now spread out through the country, has 6 offices within Italy. And even though they have other destinations in their itineraries like Albania and southern Switzerland, obviously today we're going to be focused in the Italian bit. We will also have at any minute Mr. Giorgio Boscolo, owner and president of Boscolo Tours, another very well-known company in Italy. He will join us any minute now. He was arriving to the office. Unfortunately, Carlotta Ferrari from the Florence Convention and Visitors Bureau cannot be with us today. Something urgent arose this morning, and she apologized to us and to all of you especially, and said that she would really want to be here, but she couldn't. We do have with us a very interesting panelist from our own organization. His name is Tim Verhulst. You can see him on screen as well. He's the Secretary General of our Belgium entity, and he has conducted an interesting research in Florence during the last few years that he will be able to share with us, and I think that will be of interest. We think that the combination of public and private entities is a reality these days. We do have to take into account all points of views and also interests, and we see more and more, not only in Italy, but especially in Italy, still Spain and Portugal trying to catch up that speed, but we see more collaboration, even though it is always tricky to find that between private and public sector. I think this is going to be a key factor of the recovery, and therefore it's good to hear what DMOs are also engaged, doing, and thinking about like possible measures to recover. Anja, without any further comment on my side, apologies. My name is Jorge Traver. I'm not important. I'm just the host and the moderator. I work for ETOA as a country representative in Spain and these days also in Italy, which is a great pleasure because I lived in Rome and Rome is in my heart. And therefore, even though I'm Spanish, I'm also Roman. Anja, the word is yours. thank you very much for being with us, and welcome to this webinar. And we're really eager to hear what you have to say, because I'm pretty sure that your company, as any other company, has suffered not only during the crisis, but also the consequences of the aftermath.
Yes, thank you, Jorge, for hosting this webinar and give the opportunity to discuss the current situation and the outlook for Italy. As we all know, Italy has been hit worst, among the worst in Europe. And Italy is open now since the 3rd of June, so for a couple of weeks only, being the very first ones to open the borders again, which didn't really have much of an effect, because we could go across the border, but we were stopped right next to the next border when it comes to coming in or people coming out of Switzerland, France, or Germany. It was absolutely not possible. So where are we, and what is the current situation in Italy? I think, as everyone else, we are fighting our way through the jungle of bureaucracy, of rules and regulations. The basic rules in Italy are just 3 of them. There's a social distance of 1 meter. There is an obligation to wear a face mask whenever inside a building or public transport or anything, any enclosed rooms. And when the social distance of 1 meter cannot be kept. And the 3rd rule is finally a strict regime on washing your hands or sanitizing your hands whenever possible, or whenever entering a building. So that has left a very big room for interpretation. What does that mean now for opening restaurants, for opening bars, opening shops, of course, but also mainly for opening accommodation, may it be a hotel, may it be villas, may it be whatever. And as a first reaction, it's everyone was kind of establishing his or her own rules on things, which makes it a little bit challenging at the moment to gather this, especially being a DMC. We are obliged to inform our clients, and it is quite a challenge to bring together all these self-made rules and establish it in one set, let's say, in an understandable set. I think that's pretty much the same for everyone, and the challenge for everyone to find its way through the jungle. At the same time, of course, a lot of these rules and regulations are being under discussion, as it cannot be understood, for instance, why clients could arrive in a full airplane seated next to each other, but when they come to Italy and they are tourists, all of a sudden they have to be separated on a bus, and a bus carrying 50 passengers can only carry 21, which then has consequences for the tour operator, but also for the guests in terms of prices, because if you drive 2 buses instead of 1, it's obviously going to be more expensive. So there's a lot of incomprehensible measures that need to be ironed out over the new time. Looking forward, of course, I think most companies, but certainly ours, is looking at new products, new ideas of, and we should never get this wrong, trying to minimize risk. There is no way on earth we can eliminate the risk, but we can do the best we can do to minimize it. And some of the ideas are obviously, instead of offering tours and going around and changing accommodation and all the contacts you need to have when you change accommodations, is to say, well, we can do a tour from just one hotel, a single center. It's called mainly in the UK. Also, routes less traveled. These are all ideas that we put out there. And slowly, we are receiving feedbacks from our clients. But I would also like to put this to discussion. Because in some cases we have experienced now that a lot of our clients are looking at focusing on their key products for the next seasons to make the best use of the marketing budgets and so that they have. And it seems that it is still the classical product that has been selling best before that is the one that is giving preference for the future. So it would be also interesting for us to hear from all sides what is actually in demand, because the tour operators are the ones who know the interest of possible guests best. And it would also be very good to hear from them what is going to be the trend of their customers.
Yes, thank you very much. I think you've basically thrown a lot of questions over the table, which is fantastic. I think that we're going to welcome Giorgio Boscolo, who you can also see now on the screen. As I said at the introduction, we are very grateful, Giorgio, for you to be here with us. He's the owner and president of Boscolo Tours, and I'm quite sure that your perspective about not only these new product, new ideas, and also the focusing, whether you should focus in key products or create new things that could be appealing for customers. I'm sure that you can bring a lot of experience into the conversation, and therefore the word is yours now, Giorgio.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Well, it's really a very challenging moment. And what we are doing as Boscolo is, of course, trying to read what we can do in the futures. What we do believe, as long as the situation do not get more clear, any kind of idea, any kind of product will be difficult, because if we do not know exactly what are the rules, how the flight can fly from one country to another country, if the borders are really open when we arrive, if we have to go in quarantine, not in quarantine. So all that kind of problem which are now running on the tables, I think as long as we are there, I think it will be difficult, but the number come really back, really back. What we think, what we hope is that in maybe for end of June, end of July, a lot the situation should be much more clear. For example, here in the region of Veneto, what we are saying is that from the mid of July, any restriction will be cancelled. So everything go back to normal by the mid of July. So it's a nation that goes by numbers. When the numbers are saying that virus not more anymore around or is around, but in minimum numbers, of course we can move a little more forward. So I think that, or what is my point of view, in this period we are simple to wait a little bit and to be patient. To be patient that numbers talks and everything come back more in normality. What we are trying to do as Boscolo in the meantime is trying to understand how we can find a new product, what could be after coronavirus the new trend, what the people could looking for, how could we improve our organization in terms of process, in terms of communication, in terms of technology. So there is a lot of stuff that when you are very, very busy, you have not really the time to think about. But when you have the time to think, then you see that there is a lot of things that we can do. In terms of Italy, most of the foreign people who are coming to Italy, they are going 90% of the time in very popular destinations, the classical Venice, Florence, Rome, Milano, Como, Capri, all that kind of stuff. And what is coming out during this period, but Italy is much more than that. And there is many destinations which are more natural places, small places, which are really beautiful, really authentic, that was destination that we was not much thinking about. And is coming a new demand, new people who are looking to find places that probably before the demand was not so small. So what we are doing is trying to understand all this new destination, how to take on board and how to distribute this product in an efficient way. So more naturals, more smaller and authentic place for futures. And then there is always another very important point, which is how to improve our distribution, how to be more efficient in a way, how to distribute the product and how to collaborate with our partner in a way to feed them the product and then helping them how to feed them to a consumer. So there is all an issue all about contents, informations in the destination, which is quite important. It's not only just a question of some type of price, but it's a question of how to give to our partner all of the content which is necessary to build a real story in this destination and to explain how beautiful this destination is.
Thank you very much, Giorgio. I think in a few moments also quite a few people are asking questions. We will give the word to Tim Verhulst now, and once we've had them, our three panelists to talk, then we will get into the questions. I think there is a lot of room for debate after what you, Anja, and you, Giorgio, have just said. Tim, sorry, I was just going to remind, he's our Secretary General at ETOA for the Brussels entity, and he's probably one of the persons who knows the most about policy Europe-wise. Also, an interesting research you carried out in Florence not long ago, Tim.
Yes, well, I'm not going to live up to the billing of knowing most about policy, but I'll try. Thank you very much for fitting me in, and apologies to everyone for not being Carlotta Ferrari, who is a fantastic speaker, and I think her sort of role as a national convention bureau as well as local would have been an interesting insight, and I'm sure there'll be another opportunity to hear from her. Maybe a couple of things about what we're doing and try and link that to Italy, and then quickly reference what Jorge said about the work we've done in Florence, just as a way of setting the context for this very interesting discussion. Italy as a destination is absolutely top of the list. As you probably are aware, most of you, if you're not buyers yourselves, you'll be fully familiar that Italy is the country that, for example, US operators, Japanese operators, all our Asian operators are endlessly asking questions about. And Anja's very sensible observations about what the operating conditions are, how does tourism work, is necessary to figure out before you can price it and sell it. So we all know that right now, domestic tourism is where the opportunities are. Yes, of course, there's some internal European flights opening up, but long-haul tourism is not going to be there for the summer. and we're all trying to work out, is there any business to be made during the summer months? And the answer is yes. And I'd echo what Giorgio is saying, that off the beaten track, away from some of the big cities, are doing well. And we heard some very encouraging news from Puglia Promozione in one of our webinars last week, just to illustrate the kind of places which are not necessarily the big cities. The reason why it would have been interesting to have Florence here is it is clearly a big tourism destination. Right now, the people who live there have the unusual opportunity of being able to visit the Uffizi or the Baptistry or the Accademia without lining up in particular. And I think the question of the relationship between the community and its own tangible cultural assets, now the visitors are not there very much, and how will that change in future, is really topical. And just picking up what Giorgio said about smaller and more authentic, one of the questions we asked last week was, how do people think things will change? And the respondents thought that a move towards community-friendly tourism is very likely. And I think what we can understand all sorts of things from that, but one of it is the idea that the community needs tourism in terms of jobs, for sure, but we want to develop tourism in a way that does not have what were perceived to be the negative impacts. And that just brings me very quickly on to the Florence work we did. Some of you may well have participated in a project called Firenze Risponde.it, and that was a survey that was conducted by La Nazione, as well as us, as well as Centro Studi Turistici, as well as the City Hall in Florence. And the idea was really to map what the local community in Florence thought about tourism and also what they knew about tourism. All of that information is still online, and there's just one particular point I'd like to bring to this discussion, is that one of the questions was, are you okay with tourism growing? And the idea of tourism growing is a very exotic thought to all of us now. The answer to that question was yes, but if there is a plan. So there is a very tight correlation between the residents' perception that there's a plan, we know what we're doing, here's how we see tourism developing, and their relative comfort level with tourism. And I think we'd never have wanted it this way, but we have now got the best opportunity for a reset of tourism we've ever had. And the question is, can we build back in a better way? That's certainly what gets discussed at a policy level in Brussels, when people are trying to work out where should the investment go, how to encourage more sustainable tourism. We need the ideas from the market, and I think we're going to get some in this conversation. Thank you, Jorge.
Thank you, Tim. Actually, I'd like to start with a question from Michael Velasco. He says he thinks it will be essential to encourage business to think about possible cancellations due to the return of COVID-19. And the question is, does the panel agree that we need to encourage more flexible cancellation conditions and include relevant force majeure clauses? I assume this question is for both Anja and Giorgio. I don't know if you agree with that or think that they should be adapted to the current situation. Tim, your hand is up. Maybe you want to say something?
Just as a quick thought, I think it's really important to recognize just the degree to which there is financial pain out there in the supply chain. It's been extremely challenging and remains extremely challenging. Italy's come up with all kinds of creative solutions about vouchers, but it's not the answer for everything, and there are still an awful lot of challenges. As far as the terms and conditions, I think it's important to remember a lot of this sits within European framework to do with package travel and so on. So exactly what counts as force majeure, or exactly what does the insurance a consumer have cover, where does the money live in the system? All of this has to be reviewed, because I think looking forward, one of the issues that we're all coming up against is business, or is my own personal travel insurable in the context of COVID? Who pays for the hotel if I'm obliged to stay there for 2 weeks because it goes under quarantine. So we really do need a very thorough look at what the business conditions are, particularly around insurance, both for business and people. So I think it's a very good question. It's a good topic. It's a live one.
Anja, Giorgio, you want to add anything?
I try to give to answer to one opinion about too many tourists in the city. I think that too many tourists in the city is not good for the city, is not good for tourists, is not good for the money. If we are talking about, let's talk about Venice, simple, because I'm living here, and so it's the city which I know the best. Having 10 cruises arriving a day and downloaded 50,000 people in one day, I don't think that is good for no one. And I don't think in long terms it makes good money. I remember me that the time when in Venice there was a wide number of people. There was a beautiful hotel, nice restaurant, people with good money to spend in the city. The city was beautiful. And I do not believe if you take a lot of people inside one destination that you can make more money instead to select, to protect, and to control a little bit the situations. So my view is before coronavirus in Italy, too many people, too many tourists in the major big city. And that was not good, neither for the tourists, not long terms, and not good either for the business. So that was a problem. And in my view, and I hope that during this period, we find a way to fix it, because that is not good for the money and for the business. That is my view.
Yeah.
In terms of terminal conditions, my view is very simple. If if one traveler is concerned by force majeure, the client has to get the money back. It's not the issue about voucher or other story. So if it's not possible to arrive, you give my money back. That's it. It's not a question of airlines or hotels, to operators, of cash flow or whatever. If I cannot travel because there is a question of force majeure, if you're an airlines or if you're an hotel or if whatever it is, you give my money back. And you give my money back straight. So the issue of vouchers, in my view, is something which is not fair. Because you are retaining, in my view, my money. And that is very, very incorrect. So what we do as Boscolo is for the past clients, we refund, no story in terms of voucher. And in terms of futures, which there is a lot of uncertainty and so on, we try to give a cancellation policy very flexible. 2 weeks before departure, you can cancel with no problem, and so on. Because we do understand that it's a special period, and the people, they must feel comfortable. If there is any problem, I can cancel my trip. In a normal condition, you have your cancellation policy, and you cancel because you change your mind, you pay your penalty. That's it. So that is my simple view about terms and conditions, and about what I think in terms what should the strategy of the city to protect the city, the tourists, and the business for the future.
Thank you, Giorgio. Before Anja, before giving you the word, we're getting a lot of comments and questions, and I'd like to actually. There is a comment from Marta Deutsch about the comments, Giorgio, you just made regarding overcrowding. She considers that it is due to a lack of planning and strategies at a national and local level. And what we are seeing at ETOA is that not only in Italy, but also and especially maybe in Italy and Spain, tourism is going to have to be more sustainable. So this will be the opportunity to do such thing. Gianni Miradoli says the issue related to the feeling of tourism in Florence is certainly an important factor, but I believe he believes that the city that should need a real plan is Venice, which you, Giorgio, just said. Anja, any further comments on this particular matter or any other of your interest?
No, in most cases, we fully agree with Giorgio. In terms of the over-tourism, I can, let's say, only kind of comment from the sidelines, because our strength is not so much in the city. Our focus is more on cultural tours, which would include the cities, but it's just not the tours so much that we do. We do Sicily a lot, we do Puglia a lot, Sardinia, which does not include your typical Venice, Rome, Florence, and so on. However, certainly, yes, over-tourism is a problem, and it will have to be, a balance will need to be found between the enormous numbers, which are good on one side, which are coming to Italy pre-COVID year on year, and the possibility to absorb and have a healthy relationship between the people who live here and the people who just come and visit. There's certainly ways, and what I would be hoping for and what we will be focusing a lot more on is really a full understanding what is a potential customer really looking for. Is that the big names of the Colosseum and the big cities, or is it the dream destination Italy, the picture that I must include myself as being German, have from Italy as this wonderful, relaxed country with a dolce vita feeling, with fantastic food? For this, do I actually need to see the Colosseum for the third or fourth time? Maybe not. Maybe I can go with a different route and establish also a little bit a more healthier spread throughout all the regions. That is one thing. And to answer the question on the cancellations, I mean, for the time being, there's, as Tim rightly pointed out, a lot of back and forth, and what is the solution and the best solution forward after this COVID crisis and the method or the disruption it created in the market. Going forward, in terms of cancellation, yes, while I absolutely agree for customers, it's certainly much more of a concern in the future. What we shouldn't leave out of the sight is that all the suppliers involved in tourism to a destination need to have some sort of planning tools. And we experience just now how difficult it is if you have no base to plan off. And shortened release periods, while this is certainly something that helps the customers, on the other side is it makes planning extremely, extremely difficult. So I think also there a right balance needs to be found to go forward.
I agree. Thanks, Anja. I completely agree. Tim, I don't know if you want to add something about this particular matter or any reflections? Nope. Okay. We have two very interesting questions. Let me find them. Okay. Giorgio, there is a question for you from Roberto Stagnetti, who is the CEO and founder of the Wow Factor in Italy, a luxury experiential tour operator based in Milan. The question is, do you think it's now the time to take the challenge and put an offer for really high-end luxury tailor-made experiences here in Italy?
Could you please repeat the questions?
Yes. The question is, if you think that it might be now the time to take or face the challenge and create or put an offer for really high-end luxury tailor-made experiences in Italy. So take the opportunity that this crisis has put in front of us and concentrate or focus in the high-end luxury tailor-made experiences.
What we are doing is we are preparing a new project, which is a glamping project. Is about living in a luxury service in a special tent in special destinations. So it's nothing new as product. It's a product that is already around the world, but it's not very much developed in Italy. So what we are trying to think about is to think for luxury segment a new product with new experience, and the idea is working in what we call a glamping, which is luxury tent with very special services. We practically are a small resort, about 40-50 tent maximum, where inside you have all the best food from the area. You have your special guide that take you around in the unique place around the destinations. And we was even studying this one in the mountain, in the lakes, and in the sea, and even in some special area in the city. So I think there is always time for new idea, and that is the perfect time. At least that is what we try to do, is to get the motivation to think what next for the future. So beautiful hotel, there is many. Beautiful apartments now, there is many. Villas are there. So our question was, what can we find more? What can we find different? What can we put on the market? Something that could miss. And the idea is to try to develop this kind of product. We are in advanced stage, and we think by the next spring to deliver the first piece.
Thank you very much, Giorgio. I actually, Gwendolyn Scavia has shared a reflection with us. Educate people to travel all year round, which is also somehow related to what you just said. I think that spreading out the peak times or the peak seasons would also be somehow helpful or very helpful. There is a question here for Tim, I think. Let me just find it, because I think it's to
add another small things. Another things that we are trying to work more and more is to try to put together from north to south a collection of villa and the luxury apartment, because this offer in Italy is very fragmented. And if I want a beautiful villa or fantastic apartment in Milano or in Syracuse or in Olbia, I have to chase different suppliers, and the guarantee to get the same service from the different regions sometimes is not so easy to get. So that is another project that we are looking for, because we do believe that people more and more they love to not use hotel. So if they can get a personal service in something which is not an hotel, especially the luxury segment, there is a quite big demand in that direction. Of course, it's not all about the villa apartment, is the villa apartment and all the services that they want to get, because finally they want to have a full service.
Yeah. Tim? And then Anja, because I'm sure that you also have some thoughts about this, but Tim.
Yeah, I don't know if you found the question that may have been for me earlier, but just a general reflection about how the product development will go. I mean, if you look at its national ambition and what MIBACT is looking for at a national level, innovation, sustainability, and accessibility are still the three main pillars officially of Italian tourism policy. But it's obviously the case that regional entities have a lot of power and a lot of influence over how tourism develops, as do local. And I come back to that idea of what is the plan. So it's great to have it on a bit of paper, but what does good public-private collaboration look like in order that we get new product on the market which the travel trade can buy? So I think it's, there's no question there's extraordinary wealth of offer in Italy, but there's also the extra piece of how does it sell to the industry in a way that's scalable, cross seasons, bookable in advance, and so on and so forth. So I think there's a lot to do to get that diverse offer into a form that can easily be sold and distributed. So that was my remark on that, Jorge, if there was anything else.
Thanks, Tim. Anja, any reflections or thoughts? Any initiatives that your company is taking in this regard?
We are also actively looking at tours which will come in at a higher level, that are offering an experience on a smaller scale, instead of having the big buses and the big coach tours, to look at small group tours which always existed and so on, but further, let's say, refine these itineraries, refine the ideas, to have products available which measure up on both the aspect of sustainability as well as the COVID crisis. I'm also personally a very, very big fan of trying to establish Italy as a year-round destination, because I think there is so much to be seen, so much to be done, and it cannot all play out between, let's say, March and October. There is so much more to the country, and I think that is still to be developed. We are actively working on ideas for this, but I think once it's been more published and more experienced, it will also enhance the effect of people talking to each other. How nice it was actually to see some of the big cities, maybe even, but also some of the big sites with less people in a still very, very attractive climate and attractive time.
Thank you very much, Anja. Actually, the question from Gianni Miradoli was whether we have any information regarding travelers coming from other countries into the European Union. When will they be allowed to enter Europe without being subject to quarantine? I don't know, Tim, if you have any last-minute information that I don't.
Sure. There was an announcement last week from the European Union that effective July the 1st, they're very keen for non-Schengen countries. So UK and Ireland are separate because they have pre-existing arrangements that last till the end of this year in the UK's case. But take the US, for example. As soon as the epidemiological conditions on both sides are roughly similar and there is reciprocity, so if we allow them to come, they have to allow us to go, and there's sufficient coordination, the European Union is keen for that to happen as soon as practical. Quarantine will remain a member state competence, so it's up to Italy whether to impose quarantine and in what circumstances. The UK has done it, and causing a lot of controversy because that is seen as highly counterproductive, and people are somewhat skeptical as to the scientific basis for it now. But quarantine remains a national competence.
Thanks. We have an interesting question from Pamela Signorini from the G2 group. I'm going to read it, and she's asking Anja and Giorgio maybe to, if they have any thoughts about it, to share them. In terms of accessibility and sustainability for buses, companies and suppliers specializing in group tourism that are hardly hit by this crisis. As a starting point, are we getting all Italian CTL permits for buses suspended for 2020-2021? Luca, as an example, has done so at least until the end of 2020. So she's basically asking, you think that something at a national level will be done or conducted to reduce the operational costs and therefore tour packages? Tim?
Well, again, just to give the others some thinking time. I mean, it's one of those things which, against not a national competence, that one's local. So one of the things we've seen about tourism taxes in Italy, which over the last, let's say, 10 years have been very inflationary. So if you add up the cost of the various coach permits, the parking charges, the overnight taxes, collectively, that has been highly inflationary and made Italy less competitive as a destination simply through the tourism taxes. From our perspective, if you're a destination and you wish to impose a tax on visitors, be careful what signal it gives. Removing the tax clearly has a positive signal, and there is a competitive market out there, which we saw, for example, with Montalcino not having taxes, whereas Florence did. There was a sort of relative advantage there for the time being. But I think the key thing is, right now, you've got to find ways of making your destination appealing. Price is always going to be part of it, but price and operating certainty. One of the things about coach access and group tourism is an important part of what the European tourism offer is, and it's got very interesting safety attributes, which people do not have to use the metro or the public transport system. They can get taken from attraction to the door of their hotel by a coach. Now seems like an interesting idea, since the center of Rome, for example, is not full. It seems a bit perverse to limit the number of coaches which can access the historic center to 30, which was always rather an arbitrary number. And the reason why Rome's crowded is largely due to sort of tricky infrastructure problems and a high dependence on private transport to get to work. We know that lots of people are going to use private transport to get to work for health reasons now, because people think it's safer. So the use of very efficient coaches, which do make very good use of the road space, as well as have high performance in terms of Euro 6 emission standards, we really do need to look at them hard and go, hang on, right now, that is a useful form of transport and we should not be discouraging it.
Thank you very much, Tim. We are getting so many questions and we really appreciate it. I'm answering some of them by texting, and some others will be shared. But before we continue with some questions, this is what happens with the last 60-minute webinars. We run out of time when the discussion is lively and interesting. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to select one of the questions from the poll, and we would really appreciate if you can share your input with us. They will be on your screen for a couple of minutes, maybe 3 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next one, and then to a last couple of 2 questions before we finalize this discussion. So here we go. This is the first question. Have you noticed changing product interest requirements from clients? I think this is a quite interesting question, because it is linked to various things that have been brought up during the conversation. For instance, the traveling year-round, the pivot to domestic travel. Now people are mostly thinking about traveling within Italy in the next few weeks, not necessarily in the autumn. So if you can answer, that's really great. There's still some time for you to answer that question. In the meantime, I could try and read out loud, even though I don't see you, but I could read another question that I saw down here. What do you think, Anja, Giorgio, and Tim, what do you think about future MICE tourism in Italy? Could it be developed in a more sustainable way? Also, there was a related question from Jorge Traver from Dancing Spirit Tours. In order to change the desire of visitor, would you change your marketing strategy and how? I think it is related because whether it is MICE or group travel, the marketing strategy is a key factor, obviously, and probably especially these days. I don't know if you want to comment on this.
Jorge, I can quickly say something. This is Tim again, and I'll just correct what I said last time. I think I said Montalcino. I obviously meant Montecatini. But just thinking about the MICE point, one of the key issues that we're picking up around the MICE market is a lot of the corporate clients are quite risk averse. I mean, some people may remember that there was a big conference that was due to take place in Barcelona, which had a very high tech digital content to it. And it turned out that really it was driven by insurance and risks that people chose. We do not want to send our key people because it's not safe. So it's very different, the risk profiling that takes place with MICE. So it actually intersects with the coach question. How on earth do you get all the delegates at a big business convention to and from their 4-star properties if you're not using coaches? A lot of those properties are in restricted areas. How does that work? So, you know, I think we really do need to think very carefully about what sort of service do we have to provide. Groups of all kinds, and they could be anything from school groups to very high-end business conferences, but how they get about and in order to get the services that they want, you know, now we have all discovered that having meetings online is practical and possible. The MICE industry is all about adding value. So you want to be adding value, you do not want to be putting people to inconvenience. So I think there's going to need to be a lot of creativity and innovation around how to provide that seamless experience. So the more sort of premium, high-end activity really does get the service it needs in destination.
Thanks, Tim. I'm quickly going to share the results of this first question so that people can have a look and get an idea of what the tendencies are. It seems it's too early to say. It might be true if we ask this question in maybe 4 or 5 weeks, we might get different answers, but new health and safety is always, I think, from now on, going to be on top. Let's move on to the second question. And again, we really appreciate if you can participate. Focus on domestic demand will develop more community-friendly tourism in Europe. Actually, this links directly with sustainability and what you were saying, Giorgio, and also Anja, about, you know, sustainability between the communities and the tourists. And you put a very good example, which is Venice. We have a similar one here in Spain, which is Barcelona, but obviously Venice is top one of the cities that suddenly have clean up during these sad weeks that we've spent at home, and we should try and maintain this for as long as possible. Let me see if I can find any other questions that we could quickly answer, because we are running out of time and we would like to finish this webinar with a call of action, and that will include a very short video that we would like you to watch in a few minutes. Francesca Migliori says clients are definitely more interested in small groups, maybe traveling with extended family and friends. Let's see, and more comments. Very interesting comments from the audience, I have to say. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, Annalisa, I replied to her privately, but should we not take into serious consideration with this challenging situation to open up a discussion with authorities to make Italy a more competitive destination by reducing the enormous amount of coach fees and city taxes? I don't know if Anja or Giorgio or Tim want to comment on this as well.
Well, generally, if I may say so, this is Anja. I agree, and certainly wherever we can, we try to influence this and see the negative, or discuss the negative effects it has. But it is a little bit, as we said before, a catch-22 situation. On one hand, we are discussing the previous over-tourism challenge, and at the same time, if we are saying, well, we reduce prices significantly, we're opening the doors for a lot more. So I think it's again a situation where we have to be aware of what we are doing. I certainly agree with you, Tim, that in the recent years it has been quite inflational, the increase on all sorts of taxes and fees and permissions and so on that had to be added to the cost. Certainly, this is not a good development and should be discussed and should be reviewed, as much as this is, as in any country of this world, possible between the private sector and the public sector. But on the other hand, we also need to see what effects does it have on the flip side.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm quickly going to launch the last question we have, which is also related to some of the comments we've been getting and the questions. For instance, when will the long-haul tourism return to Europe? And when they do, will diversify to more destinations? I think so, but let's see what the audience says. In the meantime, I want to take these few minutes that we have left to thank everybody and everyone for attending this webinar. I think it's been quite interesting to share thoughts and ideas from Anja and Giorgio and Tim. And we have gotten so many questions and comments that it's really nice to see that people are engaged. Obviously, facing the recovery is the most important thing we have in front of us right now. And we at ETOA believe that by provoking these discussions or conversations, I should say, we can help develop good practices, sustainable politics, and product diversification. Thank you very much. I'm going to close this poll to serve results. I think they pretty much 60% of you agree. We will have to wait and see again when if we launch this question in 4 or 5 weeks, we would be able to see how it has developed. Any final remarks from Anja or Giorgio or Tim before we go on to the video and close this webinar?
Quick one from me, if I may, Jorge, just on the tourism tax and policy. We certainly need a joined up policy because the cumulative effect of tourism tax is highly problematic. But the key issue is reciprocity. What does this money go to? Is there benefit for both visitors and residents? And I think if Carlotta were here, she'd probably make reference to the fact that the revenue from some of the coach access permits for Florence goes towards the electrification of the city bus fleet. So there is a sustainability piece which has benefit to the community. Anyone who's got suggestions of good practice, please tell us. And it's really encouraging to see just how many buyers we've got interested in the online event you're going to hear more about in a couple of minutes. Because Italy's ability to come up with new products has been going very well for hundreds of years. There's no question that there's a lot of appetite for new product in Italy, but the way we're going to develop that is by talking about it, not by just hoping it's going to happen. So we're really looking forward to getting as many people interested in the Italian market to join us on the 20th of July. So thanks for the chance to join this conversation, Jorge.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Anja and Giorgio. It's been a real pleasure to have you alongside and hear to all the interesting things that you've shared with us and the audience. And we will now go on to watch this short video, and then the webinar will be over. We'll be back, so don't worry. Giorgio?
Thank you very much for the invitation, and hoping that we are going quickly back to normal. In Italy, we like to kiss, to hug, to shake hands, and to have our nice prosecco, nice spritz before dinners, our nice gelato, walking around. We really hope to go back to normality quickly.
Thank you very much, Giorgio. I was in Rome right before this crisis, and I can't wait to go back right after. So
thank you very much, Giorgio. I absolutely agree with you, and thank you, Jorge and Tim, for hosting this event.
Thank you very much. Now we go on to the video. If I don't have control on that, but it will shortly be shown on the screen. And again, to the audience, thank you very much. If some of the questions haven't been answered, we will try to do so by email afterwards. In any case, very interesting comments and questions. Thank you very much. So let's see if we can watch the video now. Maybe not. It's technical.
If there's any technical delay, then you can always go to our amazing website where the video is also hosted.
Yeah.
So just have a look for the City Fair information on etoa.org if the video doesn't play now. But again, we've been testing this. It's actually very exciting, the first event we've done like this online. And we had lots of us testing it earlier this week. It works. It's a very efficient way of getting in front of people. So come many, come all. It's going to be fun. But if you can't get the video now, do go to the website.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to work from what I see. So I'm just going to close the webinar. As Tim said, please visit our website to watch this video for City Fair, which is our next big event and focusing destinations, as many of you already know. But it's quite interesting, and we're hoping to see some of you or many of you there. Thank you very much once again, and we will be.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Ciao a tutti.
Ciao a tutti.